Hi there, everybody. My name is Daniel, and I work at Linklaters. And in this poorly lit video, with my apologies, I'm going to be discussing with you, or putting forward some points of discussion around why we don't use more renewable energy in the UK. So I think the first and most important point to be made in this is not a point at all in the debate. It's actually defining what we mean by renewable energy. So renewable energy is energy from sources that are replenishable. So energy from something like the sun, which of course gives us solar energy, from wind, which gives us wind power, from hot springs, which give us geothermal power, uh, from rivers, which give us hydroelectric power, tides, which give us tidal power, obviously, and biomass, from which we can develop biofuels that we can then use to generate energy. So some of the obvious advantages of renewable energy are that it is, as I've said, renewable or replenishable, which means that the sun goes up every day and energy can be collected from the sun every day. The wind blows, obviously, rivers flow, so it's always there in a way that non-renewable energy is not always going to be there. There is only a limited or finite supply of coal or oil or any fossil fuel that we burn to generate energy. Whereas, as I've said, the sun goes up and energy can be gathered from it every day. So some of the other advantages of renewable energy that I want to cover right now are that, of course, it is a safe form of energy because it doesn't necessarily generate the same pollution as, for example, a coal-fired plant. There's not really much of a threat of a nuclear meltdown if you're using solar or wind energy, and it's really abundant. We have enough sunlight in the planet that would meet our needs for energy every day. It's a clean form of energy, or it's certainly a cleaner form of energy, so it's better for the environment. And of course, it can be collected in multiple locations at the same time. Solar energy can be collected in that way. Of course, rivers and hydroelectric dams can generate energy in various different locations. And of course, it could also allow energy independence. So it would mean that we would not be dependent on gas coming from other countries or on electricity that's being purchased from other electricity markets. So some then of the disadvantages of it are that it is not as cost effective as other energy options. So that just means that to produce renewable energy often costs more than it does to produce energy using fossil fuels or non-renewable sources. And it's not necessarily always commercially viable, therefore, without subsidies from government. And also, it's not necessarily viable depending on where you live. So to use an obvious example, I used to live in Manchester, where it rains a lot. It rains quite a bit of the time. So therefore, there's not necessarily as much sunlight in the day. So to gather and store the renewable energy. We live in London, or certainly I live in London, in landlocked London, so there isn't any coast near in the immediate vicinity whereby tidal energy could be gathered. Also, in terms of using rivers and hydroelectric power, using hydroelectric power requires large dams to be built across rivers, and this is, of course, very, very disruptive to any wildlife and plant life along the river, and it can be, significantly disruptive to anyone who lives close to a proposed hydroelectric scheme. So I think they are lots of the reasons why we don't use more renewable energy in the UK. I think probably it's down to the availability of it. Basically, where you live, what the nearest power plant to you that is generating your electricity. If it's generating it from more renewable sources, then of course then it will. But if it isn't, if you don't live close to a renewable source of power, then it may well be that you are then having your power delivered by non-renewable sources. And I think a key one is that without government subsidy, there's obviously a significant, maybe a significant cost in delivering renewable energy. And I think that that's probably a significant one, is that without subsidy, there is a cost to the consumer. So I hope these ramblings have been somewhat useful to you and are of assistance to you in having your debate. In terms of having your debate, I would definitely recommend having more notes on hand than I did. But I hope this has been useful. Thanks very much for your time, and goodbye.